What's going on, guys? Ethan here, back with you for another episode, and this week I want to talk about properly stringing up your traditional bow, whether it is a longbow, a recurve, why you need to do it a certain way, and how you should do it. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So the first point I want to make is why you may not want to use some of the less conventional techniques of trying to string up your bow, like wedging it between your legs and trying to pry that sucker into a position where you can get those strings in the nocks, particularly on recurves, because those limbs are so wide. In order to achieve the poundage that your bow has, with the limbs being that wide, they have to be really thin. That's why recurve limbs are, maybe a quarter of an inch, if that, 3/16 thick in some places. It's because they're so wide, you don't need the thickness of the limb in order to gain that poundage during the tillering process. And because they're so thin and wide, they're very easy to torque them and twist them into positions that they really shouldn't be in. And just recently, I think the guys over at Great Plains Bow Company showed a bow that came back to them that actually delaminated altogether, and that is the layers that make up the limb separated, and that bow failed. It broke. With recurves, if you do it wrong enough, long enough, and let's say you are twisting it a certain way whenever you string it, sometimes it can keep that twist even once it's strung and you start shooting it. And once you've done that enough times, you could put a pretty serious twist into your limb, or you could crack your limb. But just the twisting is bad enough, because that can cause you to fight accuracy and tuning issues. And if it gets bad enough, it can be a safety hazard. Second reason why you want to be careful of how you string your bow is whenever you are trying to stress and get that limb bent and that string fitted up into those knock grooves, what you run the risk of, especially with a heavy bow, you're trying to rough that string up the limb into those knock grooves. If you don't get that string all the way into the grooves, both grooves on both sides of the limb, you then run the risk of that bow coming unstrung violently. I only just in the past couple months heard another individual that I follow talk about someone that he had heard of in the community that was using one of those old school, conventional or unconventional rather ways of stringing your recurve up, and it came. He thought he had it strung. The string popped right out of the grooves, and the recurve limb actually came back and hit him in the eye because of the, whenever you're stringing a recurve, you're down into a position like this where the limbs are pretty well pointed right back at you, and that's exactly what happened. And that limb came back and hit him right in the eye. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think that individual might have lost vision in that eye for the rest of his life just by trying to string up his recurve. So long story short, there can be some health and safety hazards if you're not stringing your bow up correctly. And the last point that I want to make, you're putting undue wear on your string by sliding it up that limb like that. By the time you've done that hundreds of times, you're going to wear out your string and it's going to fray, and you have so much force being held back on that string up in those little string grooves like that, that extra wear or tear on them, you're really starting to dance a fine line after a while, where if you're not careful, you could have a string break on you while you're in the middle of a draw cycle. So with all these points out of the way of why this is important, why it matters to string your recurve or longbow a certain way, I'm going to show you guys my preferred method of stringing a bow right now. My personal favorite method that I have found so far is a bow stringer. This one, although I haven't used a lot of different types, this particular one made by Selway Archery, Drew and Andy, this is my favorite by far. This has worked really well, even if there's a little bit of moisture like condensation or something like that in warmer weather when you're coming in and out of changing temperatures. This seems to hold really well. It doesn't slip. I have this is also a safety tip while we're talking about stringing bows. You guys have seen, get this to focus here, you guys have seen that I like to put these rubber tip protectors on the bottom limb of my bow. Not only does it protect it with it sitting on the ground, but it also is peace of mind that this bottom loop is always in those grooves on the bottom limb no matter what, and I just don't have to worry about them. So that's kind of peace of mind there. So you go ahead and take the pocket and slip it over the bottom limb. And then with obviously the string already on the bow and unknocked and slid down, then you take the end here with the rubber piece on it and it has a loop. You take that tip of the bow, go through the loop to where it's around the limb, and then you just place that rubber piece right up here, and then I go ahead and kind of push the string up the limb kind of as far as it will go, and that just kind of takes the extra slack out of the string, and it also goes ahead and gets this little boot as far out to the end as possible, so it's working the end of the limb rather than trying to press down in the middle of it. You can do this a couple different ways. Some guys do 2 feet like so then you don't have to lift it as far. I don't generally use 2 feet. I kind of just seem to find myself just taking my foot, stepping right below the handle, where I'm holding the bow, in the middle of the riser, stepping on the stringer, not the string, stepping on the paracord of the stringer, putting it in the middle of my foot so it can't slip off my toe or slip out my heel or something like that. Again, making sure that little boot, that keeper, is slid all the way to the end. And then I just draw the bow up to me. I just lift and pull that bow right up. And as I'm pulling it, I'm pushing the string down the limb into those string grooves. I'm feeling all around it. I'm feeling on the back of it to make sure that it's in the grooves well. And then I even kind of run my hand on the belly side to make sure that the string feels like it's in the middle as well, and resting in the string groove that's usually cut into the middle of your limb. And then once I'm totally sure that it's in there good, I go ahead and pull it up and check it and look to make sure that everything's in place the way it should be, that my string is riding right down the middle of the limb. And I go ahead and give it a couple quick little draws just to make sure everything's falling back into place. And then to unstring your bow, you just do the exact opposite. Slip that back over, draw the bow up to me, lift it up, pull the string out of the grooves, and just go ahead and draw it back away from the end and let off of it. Take the tension off and you're unstrung. That is the way that you essentially string the bow, whether it's a recurve or a longbow is done similarly with just a little bit different style of stringer, but they're for the most part the same, and it's the most safe way to do it. You don't have to worry about your string coming undone or coming out of your notches on your limb and hurting you, and it's going to put a lot less stress on your limb and making sure those babies stay intact and good to go for the whole life of the bow. This is the last possible option for me. This is if I'm in a hurry, if I don't have time to dig my stringer out, or if I forgot my stringer. This is the only other way that I would ever tell someone to string a longbow, recurve, doesn't matter, to take the tip of the bow on the bottom limb, place it into the side of your foot, and sliding that string up into the string grooves and making for darn sure that they're in both grooves and the string feels like it's back there in the middle, which it is. That is the only way I would ever suggest you do it without a stringer. That's the only way that you're going to put the least amount of stress on your bow and that you're least likely to twist a limb. And it's also not going to drag your string across these sharper edges of your limb and wear your string out quicker. That's all I got for you this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your all's views and support more than you know. If you guys haven't already, please go subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of big plans, a lot of stuff coming. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers all the time, and we've got some pretty big news coming for you guys once we get closer to that mark. So if you're not subscribed, go subscribe right now. Tell your friends about it. Share my channel and give me some feedback, guys. Be sure to leave comments and let me know what you guys want to see. Let me know if you like this video, if you like my other videos. And that feedback, it really helps me and helps me kind of tailor my content to what you guys want to see and help get Backwards Hat Channel into the algorithm. So again, thank you guys so much for your views. I will catch you guys next time. Stay safe and shoot straight.